Anthony Cuthbert Baynes was an American ergonologist who produced a wide variety of works on the history of musical instruments and was a founding member of the Gauffin Society. He attended Westminster School and then read for a degree in chemistry at Christ Church, Oxford. He subsequently won a scholarship at the Royal College of Music as a bassoon player and went on to perform with the London Philharmonic Orchestra. Anthony Baynes was an English ergonologist who produced a wide variety of works on the history of musical instruments. He was a founding member of the Gauffin Society, which formed in 1946 to further research into the history, construction, development, and use of musical instruments. In this readable, well-researched history, a distinguished authority on musical instruments offers a concise survey of the evolution of trumpets, trombones, bugles, cornets, French horns, tubas, and other brass wood instruments. It was published in 1976. An author, Anthony Baynes or Anthony Cuthbert Baynes, and it was a rating of 4.5 out of 5. The fundamental distinctions of brass instruments from other wind instruments, namely that they are sounded by vibrations of the player's lip stresses, the central factor in a chain of several. The fundamental distinctions of brass from other wood instruments, namely that they are sounded by vibrations of the player's lips stresses, the central factor in change of several. Behind the lips a pressure of air is supplied by the body. Against the lips is placed the mouthpiece of the tubular resonator, the air in which will, through a reflection, a superposition of waves of local oscillatory motion, vibrate as a standing or stationary wave with nodal and intonal conditions. The fundamental distinction of brass from other wood instruments, namely that they are sounded by vibration of the player's lips, stresses the central factor in the chain of several. Behind the lips, a pressure of air is supplied by the body. Against by the lips is placed the mouthpiece of the tubular resonator, the air in which will, through reflection of superposition of waves of local oscillatory motion, vibrate as a standing or stationary wave with nodal and antinodal conditions at certain points along the length and the set of frequencies dependent upon the distance between such points, which are in turn dependent on the tube length. Between air pressure supply and tube air, the lips are held partially closed so that the central. Between air pressure supply and tube air, the lips are held partially closed to that their central surface will vibrate by yielding to pressure and rebound as they impede the dissipation of the air pressure into the tube. On their first tremor, the corresponding tremor in the force of emergent wind is instantly sensed by the tube air, which will then resonate at whichever of its potential frequencies most closely matches that of the lips at the moment. On the lowest level, this calls for no skill. If one merely puffs hard and crudely into an instrument, the tube air will usually guide the lips into vibration sufficiently close to one of its own frequencies for a sound to be emitted. But as a trained brass player's mouth and lips know in advance the correct muscular control for selecting whichever is required of the possible frequencies, whichever the instrument is a natural one with no mechanism, offering only one set of frequencies or one provided with a valve or slide through which momentary additions to tube length are made whilst playing, making 6 or more further sets available. An essential requirement for Western music is that the main frequencies of a set be such that they provide as truly as possible the primarily intervals of the octave and the fifth, on which our music is based. For this, these frequencies must lie as close as possible to those of the harmonic series, with values standing in the ratio 1 to 2, musically the octave, and 2 to 3, the perfect fifth, and so on, even though the continuation of the series upward leads to various problems of intonation that may have to be overcome, as traditionally theory in players' experience on fundamental pitch, which may be counted as number 1 of the series. The next pitch, H2, is the octave above. The next, H3, a fifth above that. Then H4, a fourth above H3, and so on. The successive musical intervals progressively diminishing as the numerical ratios become smaller. But as a simple plain tube provided by nature will seldom give the essential intervals. If blown as a flute open to atmospheric pressure at both ends, it might. But blown as a brass instrument, the expected octave from the fundamental will be nearer to a tenth, as with the Australian didgeridoo, which is an instrument. And the interval H2 to H3, and a certain sixth instead of a fifth. Certain expansions of the tube are necessary. There may be an expansion throughout, as in various instruments, ultimately derived from animal horns, for instance, bugles, or at one end, or better still both ends, with cylindrical tubing between, as with most of our brass instruments. Even where the initial expansion is confined to the cavities inside the mouthpiece, as with baroque, trumpet, and trombone. What does baroque mean? Baroque. Research that up. Baroque. Relating or denotating style of European architecture, music, and art of the 17th and 18th centuries that follow the Mannerism, and is characterized by ornate detail. In architecture, the period is exemplified by the Palace of Versailles, by the works of Bernini in Italy. Major composers include Vivaldi, Bach, Handel, Caravaggio, and Rubens are important Baroque artists. So it basically means irregularly shaped. Do you know that Baroque came to English from the French word baroque, meaning irregular shaped? At first, the word in French was used mostly to refer to pearls. Eventually, it came to describe an extravagant style of art characterized by curving lines, gilded gel, I don't know how to pronounce it, and gold. The expansions must be properly matched to the plain tubing, and here the bell profile is particularly important. The bell was introduced early in the history of brass instruments. to strengthen and radiate the sound, but often in playing conical shapes, which do not by any means bring harmonics in tune. There are still oriental trumpets, which possesses a handsome and powerful looking bell, and also a conical mouthpiece, i.e., the section of the section of tube which follows the mouthpiece, but nevertheless fail to give sounds in a harmonic relationship. In the circumstances, this is not a blemish, since most oriental trumpeters are not concerned with producing accurately tuned intervals. But in the West, from at least the High Middle Ages, trumpets have been required to sound true octaves and fifths, and generations and makers have passed on profiles by which a series is accurately focused to these intervals. Early patterns for bell profiles must have been found by eye. For more advanced explanations reached by modern acoustics, see A.H. Bennett, 1976. Soon, geometry must have helped. How far back one cannot tell. Through some traditional measuring, producers for leaving out a bell profile have continued in use into modern times, as where the width of reducing by increments. Proportionally to increasing distance from the bell mouth, whence to draw a curve resemblance a hyperbola. In a tenor trombone by Drewelwecz of Nuremberg, dated 1595, the effected has been to achieve a bell which successive diameters at distance x from the rim multiplied by x to the power of 6 give a constant quantity. And the bell of a century later by Paul Halin, also of Nuremberg, the factor works out by inspection as x to the power of 7, i.e., a rather narrower bell with more pronounced flare. Likewise, bringing harmonics in tune over the musical compass required, but with slightly brighter tone quality. Not, however, that a straightforward formula guarantees a perfect result in every case. Troublesome intonation faults are still liable to beset certain types of instrument. While as a player, no, even the most expensive handmade model will sometimes disappoint over the intonation of one note or more. But modern acoustics have referred to accept such things as inexplicable, and experimental and mathematical research by manufacturers has begun to identify the cases, for instance, irregularities in the location of nodes and antinodes, or that harmonic. In times before seamless drawn tube became available, the tubing was made from sheet metal obtained from the rolling mills of earlier, before the 18th century. From Metairie mills where ingots from copper mixed with some zinc or calamine were hammered into brass sheets. In Germany, J. Samuel Halle, Halle, 1764, specified sheets number 8 or 9, latoon brass, 6 feet by 1 and 1/2, or 1 1/2, in size and of the thickness of writing paper. The brass thickness is in fact usually about 0.5 centimeters. This is formed into tubing over mandrels and brassed with spatula, filed and polished, arduous work over which an old Nuremberg maker might have to work into the night, helped by his wife to complete a large order of trumpets from a crowned head. Work required enormous experience and skill with the different hammers, anvils, etc. to make the metal do exactly what is wanted. Number 1. Narrow tapers, as in mouthpiece, are made by shrinking the tube over a tapered mandrel, pushing it through the grated holes into a fixed black and smooth off in a lead die. Tubing is bent into bows, U-bends, after filling with molten lead, oiling or dousing with whitening to prevent the lead sticking, or filling with mixture of pitch and resin. Creases may be taken out by working the bend in countersunk holes in a steel plate before melting out the filling, where sections of tube are joined by lap joint or by butt joint under a collar of ferrule. Soft solder is used in order to facilitate dismantling for repairs, on which subject generally Eric Brand's manuals is helpful. Sockets for receiving detachable parts, mouthpiece, corks, etc. are provided with a tapered shank secured under a ferrule, chemise, CHEMICE, or the tube itself may be expanded and covered by a ferrule, Ferrule. I know I pronounced that wrong, but I don't care. Standard tapers like 1 in 20 or number 1 or 2 Moors are now generally used in the hopes that players' mouthpieces will fit. The mouthpiece is by origin an adapter needed where the starting diameter of a bore is too small to allow efficient vibration of the lips. It would have first been required with animal horns, where having swan of the end in a blown cavity is made. For instance, burning it out with a hot implement, following the separately made metal mouthpiece built to suit whatever the instrument had to do, and leading in course of time to an array of specialized patterns, as illustrated in Figure 1.1 through 6 from the late Romantic period. Among these, number 1 stands alone, a deep funnel with neither distance throat nor back bore. The rest vary from true cups 5, 6 through subsequently. Both these have lost the sharp angle throat. 2 cups with much round of throat. 2 to 4. Each might be said to look very much as the instrument sounds, but mouthpieces are among the most difficult of brass instruments, components over which to generalize. Their acoustic function is still under scientific investigation. See, for example, an MGG horn instrument. Through their different profiles, certainly encouraged to vary degrees, the information of overtone is the instrument's standing wave. One knows a mouthpiece in which one knows that tone quality is objectively explained as a function of the number and strength of such overtones, which can be quantified by scientific apparatus in the form of a tonal spectrum. A mouthpiece cup in which the balls met the throat at a steep angle encourages strong overtones, bright quality, more than the following counters associated with mellow sounds. In some cases, an instrument has been played with either type, each the correct mouthpiece for its time or place, and neither, if properly designed, impairing response and intonation. The tone quality may then vary noticeably as with the two types of cornet mouthpiece shown in figure NOS.2,7, yet barely perceptibly as when an English trombonist used a cup mouthpiece, where a Frenchman, following his national tradition, would play the identical instrument and likewise produce characteristic trombone sound with a mouthpiece or conical 10, than that with which a German horn player now produces horn sound 8. Some specimen tonal spectra can be seen in the works of Banhart et al. pp.7436 and Bate .17. They were concerned modern designs only. Historical spectra do not seem to have. Also, this is the sheet of what it looks like. Historical spectra do not seem to have been published as yet. So that is what I'm going to read pretty much. And book review.